Good morning, dear students of Prep 2. Today we're starting to discuss details of Chapter 4 concerning our novel The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Chapter 4 starts after a whole year of a certain event or evidence. A year ago, there was a very important discussion happening between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Utterson concerning Hyde and the will. At the end of this conversation, Jekyll made it clear for Mr. Utterson to leave everything and to stop discussing or speaking about the will or Mr. Hyde. And he told him that he should consider that a personal matter. Chapter 4 starts after a whole year of that conversation. At the beginning of this chapter, we are introduced to a new character, which is a servant. That servant for us is one of the people. He's going to add a very, very important incident that is going to help later on. On that night, it was around 11 o'clock. This servant, whom we are going to speak about, is used to do something every night. After she finishes her chores, she usually go upstairs to her room and spend a little while before going to bed, looking through the window, breathing fresh air, and dreaming a little bit. On that night, the servant did the same as she used to do every night. She went upstairs to her room and she was looking through the window and she started dreaming. It was around 11 o'clock and the street was nearly empty. Then the appearance of an old, nice, decent gentleman caught her attention. When she started watching that man, she found herself smiling because he really looked old, nice, kind, and it was obvious that this old man was a rich and respectable person from the way he dresses. He was walking the street silently, and on the other side of the street appeared a younger gentleman who was a little in size. He was a little man, and he was walking on the other side. She kept watching the old gentleman until they met at a certain point in the street. When they stood together, it was clear that they don't know each other, and the old gentleman was asking about some direction for a certain place. When the old man asked for direction from the way he pointed, the girl, the servant, was really shocked. She was surprised to find that the younger gentleman was holding a wooden walking stick in his hand, reacted in a very, very strange and weird way. The young gentleman shouted loudly, an angry shout, and he started stepping on the ground, and he started waving this walking stick into the air. The old gentleman, the same as the young servant, were shocked, so he stepped back just one little step. Then a horror thing happened. The terrible thing that happened was that the young gentleman, whom she identified to be a man called Hyde, he picked up the wooden stick and he hit the old gentleman on his head, and the man fell to the ground immediately. As if this wasn't enough for him, but he kept stepping on the dead body, and he kept beating the dead body with the wooden stick, cracking his bones and making a mess in the street. That thing was really horrible, so When the little girl saw him doing something like this, she was shocked, and she can't bear hearing the bones or the cracking bones, and she can't help watching such a violent, terrible act, so she fainted immediately. She fainted for some time, and she said that she doesn't know for how long, but she noticed that it was around 2 o'clock at that time, so it was nearly 2 hours. She fainted for nearly 2 hours. After that, she had a look through the window again, and to her sadness and surprise, she found the dead body, the man whom she the man whom she saw, the old gentleman, was dead in the street, lying alone. Immediately she reported the police, who came in order to investigate what was happening. When the police came, the girl told all what she had seen to the police officers. She told them the accident itself and how did it happen, and she told them about the younger gentleman whom she knew to be Mr. Hyde. She said that she had seen him once before because there was a mutual business between her master and him, and she only saw him once before, but she grew to dislike and to hate him, the same as everyone else. Later on, the police officers went to search the dead body to know who is that man and why was he killed like that. For their surprise, they knew that he was murdered, but not for the sake of stealing. They found some valuable things with him, money, gold ring, a valuable watch. So the one who murdered him wasn't intending to steal anything from him. They started searching his pocket for any paper to know who is that dead man, but they found nothing but an envelope, and that envelope was addressed to a person called Mr. Utterson, and there was an address written on the envelope. The dead body was taken to the police station, and they headed to the address that was written on the envelope of Mr. Utterson. The police officers went to Utterson and told him all what they had found out, but he refused to say anything until he see the dead body to know who is that person exactly. He went to the police station, and once Utterson had the first look on that dead body, he told them that unfortunately this was Sir Danvers Carew. Sir Danvers Carew was a rich man, respectable person, very kind, so much loved. He has no enemies at all, so Utterson was really sad for him. Danvers Carew was Mr. Utterson's client and friend as well. Utterson was ready to help the police in order to find the murderer of that kind man, so they told him all what they know. They told him that the young servant told them about what happened, and they mentioned the name Hyde. Once Utterson heard that name, he was alarmed. He asked them, how does he look like? Is he a short person? But they only told him that the girl said that he was a little man, little in size. They also showed him another important thing, which was half of the walking stick that Hyde was holding and murdered Sir Danvers Carew with it. He immediately recognized that stick to be one of the sticks that he gave to his friend Jekyll years ago. At once, Utterson volunteered to show them where Hyde lived because he knew his address already, and he was ready to help them until they catch. The police officers and Mr. Utterson went directly to Soho Street, where he was sure that Hyde lives there, and Hyde had already told him his address before. When they went to Soho Street, which was a place where criminals live, poor people, some people who are not of a good past, so it wasn't a good neighborhood. They went to the house, and the housekeeper of Mr. Hyde opened the door. They asked her about him, but she told them that Hyde have came that night very late at night, and he spent just an hour or maybe less than an hour and left again. When she told them so, they asked her about his usual routine, but she said that she's used to this because sometimes he disappeared and appeared suddenly. She hasn't seen him for around 2 months, and this was the first time for her to see him after that period. Later on, they asked her to enter, or her permission to enter the house and start searching, and she was glad to let them in, as it was clear that even his housekeeper doesn't love him, she doesn't like him as well. They entered, they started searching, and they discovered from the way the rooms were turned upside down, the clothes were thrown on the ground, shelves were turned upside down, drawers were opened, things were really messy and untidy. It was clear that Hyde was really terrified after what he had done, and he was not stable at that time. He was trying to hide some things or get rid of some things and escape before the police came. They discovered that the other half of the wooden stick, which is the murder weapon, the weapon that he used in murdering Sir Danvers Carew, was already left at the back, behind the door of the room. And they also found a pile of ash in the fireplace. When they have a look into that ash, they discovered that he had burnt his checkbook. These were the two mistakes that Hyde had done, and they were the evidences that the police is going to use in order to catch him. Leaving the weapon which he used in murdering is something, and the other thing was the checkbook. Leaving the checkbook means that Hyde has no other way to access his bank account other than going to the bank itself in order to withdraw money. So the police told Mr. Utterson that his plan is that he's going to go to the bank and set a trap for Mr. Hyde in order to catch him. And this would be very easy for them to do. And these were the mistakes that Hyde have done when he murdered Carew. This was the end of chapter 4. Later, you're going to find the different questions based on chapter 4, which included all the details that we have already discussed and explained now. If we have a look at these questions, how did the servant girl describe the crime? We said that the servant girl described the crime accurately. She told them about the old gentleman who was walking down the street, and the other gentleman, which is Hyde, who appeared. They stopped at a certain point at the road, at the street, and then Hyde murdered him savagely. Number 2, describe the victim when he was found by the police. The victim was crushed. And the word crushed means that his bones were really broken into very, very small pieces. He was in a terrible condition. The body itself was in a terrible condition. He was crushed and smashed, and he was piled, like just a pile, not a body. Number 3 is the envelope and the half stick were important. We've just mentioned this before, that the presence of the envelope helped the police officers to find Mr. Utterson, who helped them to find Hyde's house later on, and to reach his house, and enables the police in order to set a trap for him. And the half stick, the first half made Utterson know that it was Hyde, and he's related to Jekyll, and the other half made it clear that he is the murderer, as he has the weapon which was used in murdering Sir Danvers Carew. What was the police plan to arrest Mr. Hyde? The police plan to arrest Mr. Hyde was to set a trap for him in the bank and wait for him until he come to withdraw some money so that they will be able to catch him easily. Number 5. Why was it difficult to describe Mr. Hyde in notices? It was difficult because everyone, not just the servant, who sees Hyde just have a feeling of hatred, feeling of disgust. They all have negative feeling towards him. And if you ask anyone about him, he would told you that he's evil, he looks ugly, but no one was able to give exact explanation or exact description of his features. Number 6 is a quotation. Yes, I recognize him. I'm sorry to say that this is Sir Denver Carew. These words were said by Mr. Utterson to the police officers when they came to his house, and he went with them to the police station, and he saw the dead body of Sir Denver Carew, and he really recognized him. Number 7, particularly small and particularly evil looking. That's what the girl told us. These words were said by the police officer to Mr. Utterson when he asked him about Hyde, and he told him that is he a short man, and they said the words that the servant have already mentioned, that he is particularly small, particularly evil looking. Number 8, I have him in my hands, sir. You can depend on that. These words were said by the police officer after they searched Hyde's house. He was saying these words to Mr. Utterson, planning to trap Hyde at the bank, and he believed that it would be much easier to catch him later on. All these answers are already written. Please complete the video till the end. Thank you for listening. I hope that you all understand what we have explained, and I hope you better chance later on. Thank you so much.